And welcome back to another video. It's been a hot minute, and the last video I wasn't even really in it. I was just Ed and Alicia, and they were messing around, and it was fun because it was nice to just, you know, be in the back seat of a video rather than being the front and center of it. But because I've kind of been going through my slump, I wanted to talk about it because I think it's really, really important, and these things aren't spoken about enough. There's still a massive taboo on mental health and stuff like that. And B, because I feel like I'm on the last leg of it. I feel like I'm on the last leg of my depression slump, and I feel like I can give like an impassioned talk about it, but I don't know, because I've also been like super confused and all over the place. Like a few days ago I was drinking from a can and I forgot that I had drink left in the can. I just picked it up and spilled it fucking everywhere to put it in the recycling. So I don't know how this video is going to go. I made a couple of notes to kind of order my thoughts in a sense, but I don't know how well that's going to work. I hope it's going to work, and I hope that I can, you know, bring out a decent video from this, but I really don't know. But you are seeing me in, you know, more or less depression fashion. If I'm like talking too much or rambling too much, I mean, I talk too much as is, but this is where my head is at. It's just completely disorganized, and I don't know how to do or say anything, which is kind of why I've been avoiding Twitter and just sort of throwing myself into other things. Like, for example, today I went to a pet store just to look at some animals and to look at some cages, because Ed and I are considering getting guinea pigs in the future. So we were just going to see them, and then I made an entire Sunday roast, which was gorgeous. It was beautiful, loved it, 10 out of 10 experience, would recommend it to anyone. And the rest of the week I've kind of just been drawing and thinking about writing some poetry. I have a brilliant idea, and once I sort of knuckle down and write the first one, I think I'll share it with the internet. I will need to find a platform to post it on though, so I don't know, I mean, if you guys have any suggestions. I don't really want to post it on a writing site, because I did that a lot in my teenage years. I think I'm past that. I'm kind of looking for like a blog or a forum that I can post it on where it will, you know, be read by quite a few people. So if you guys have any suggestions for that, please let me know. I am going to write it in the next few days. I also have a couple of blogs that I'm working on for Sohail's blog. I'm writing one about the hijab, so keep an eye out for that one. And there should be some Faithless Hijabi blogs in the making as well. So yeah, just keep your eyes peeled for that. If you haven't checked out Faithless Hijabi, please do. It's in the link. It's in the description below. It's linked. So yeah. So let's talk about depression, because clearly I've got some of that going on right now. It's not a ton, but I've got some of it going on. I'm going to be doing this a lot with my hands because I don't know what I'm doing today. But let's talk about it before I left Islam, because that's the first thing I've put down. And a few people asked me about this when I stated that I was going to do a video on depression, and a lot of people were like, well, how was it before you left religion, and how is it now after religion? Secular Hitchens asked that, Duran M asked that, Science Lonely asked that, so there was quite a few of you. Now, sorry, just gonna make myself comfortable. So before I left Islam, I think I've had depression since I was like a teenager. Because I had very few friends. I was very isolated. I was always stressed. I had a very, very rough home life, very, very difficult school life, as you saw with a couple of videos ago where I talked about my experience in an Islamic school. So I was constantly stressed. I used to talk to myself a lot, and not just like, muttering to myself under my breath. I would have full conversations with myself. I had imaginary friends until I was like, I want to say 16. It's not something I'm proud of, but it is something I had developed as a coping mechanism. I had literal imaginary friends that I would have full-on dialogues with, and I would do my voice and their voice sometimes. So I don't know if that's depression or something else, but it doesn't happen anymore. But I did used to do that when I was really young. And I don't know, I think, first of all, no one recognized it as depression. People just recognized it, oh, she's just sad because of everything in her life. But there were other signs as well. Like, I hated taking a bath, I hated self-care. There were times where I just would not care about myself. Like, I would not brush my hair, would not trim my nails for like months. I would take a bath like once a week. I just saw no point of doing anything. And the only reason I took a bath once a week is because it's recommended by Islam to take a bath at least once a week, which is, ridiculous. Personal grooming, didn't care about it. It was a dark time, is what I'm saying. So before I left Islam, that was my life. I was just miserable, and the sort of guidance that people would say was just be patient and pray to Allah to, resolve this. And god damn it, did I pray. I prayed for years. I prayed for years endlessly. I would wake up early in the morning because I could not sleep very well. Wake up early in the morning, pray, 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 pray. You know, do my 5 times, do my extra. I prayed as much as I could, and it never went away. You know, I didn't have voices in my head, but I definitely had like imaginary friends or people. Like I recognized that they weren't real, but I needed something to talk to. So I would talk to those things, and you know, I would talk back. And you know, I prayed for myself to stop doing that because I knew it wasn't normal. But then again, I had nothing else that I could possibly do. So the guidance was just be patient, you know, and patience has a limit. Like when I'm depressed now, if I ever go into a depression slump, I become so impatient. Even though I'm doing nothing, I become so impatient with everything. I don't know how I had the patience back then. But I was, you know, religiously patient. And I think the other things that really didn't help with the fact that I was constantly miserable, nihilistic, nothing has meaning, I don't give a fuck about myself. I think what also didn't help was that I was constantly made to feel guilty about how human I am. You know, anytime I made a mistake, I had to beg for forgiveness from something or someone in order to, you know, relieve that fear of hellfire from me. Because we all know Allah is fucking petty, yeah? You know? Like, you can forgive a guy who killed 100 people, you know, just go straight into heaven, that guy, because, you know, he was a good believer or whatever. But, you know, you can't forgive Abu Talib, for example, for, you know, being the best he possibly could to his favorite messenger. He just didn't believe in Allah, so he's burning in fucking hell. So, you know, we know Allah is petty. I was aware of that. I would never say it back then, but I was aware of how petty a God my God was. So I would constantly pray for forgiveness. I would constantly, you know, seek forgiveness from people who I thought I had wronged. Because, you know, I could never just let things lie. You know, not like I can do now. Like if I just like steal a couple of chocolate bars from someone's house, you know, without asking them. That's something that I would ask forgiveness for. It's not even stealing, it's just being a guest in someone's house. You just have more than you should. I would ask forgiveness for that in, you know, as a Muslim. And it's pathetic because they would just look at me like, okay. But to me, it was important because if they didn't forgive me and, you know, that was pulled up on the Day of Judgment, that would be a reason that I could be sent to hell. Because I hadn't asked forgiveness from that person, because I had stolen their property, you know? It put me in a very severe sense of paranoia. It made me never want to leave my house. It made me, you know, constantly think about the things that I was doing and how I could avoid sin. And, you know, the fact that I kept falling into sin, and I would constantly ask Allah, like, why have you made me this way? Why am I constantly committing sin? The answer is that I'm human and Allah doesn't exist, but I didn't know that. I'm rambling, I'm sorry. But that was my whole situation before I left Islam. I was just constantly guilty. I was just really unhygienic, uncaring, unfeeling about myself. You know, ungroomed, everything. You know, I hated myself for being human. I just wanted to be dust. I remember, like, I was walking home, I think it was from school or something. Definitely wasn't anything else. I was walking home from school and I was like looking out. We had like this green area where I used to live, and I was looking at the grass and I was like crying. I was like, why couldn't I just be that? Why couldn't you just make me some grass? Like some fucking grass. I wouldn't have to be worrying about, I would just have to swing from side to side until some motherfucker stepped on me, and then I would be dead. Like that would have been so much easier. But that's where my mind was. Like I just wanted to disappear. I didn't want to exist. Everything fucking sucked. I hated it. And after I left Islam, that didn't really change. I was still a mess, like a hot fucking mess. Like a lot of people don't believe it. Like a lot of people don't believe, like, oh my god, you let go of all your imaginary things. Like, why is that a bad thing? It was terrible for me because my entire purpose, I had one goal for my life before I left Islam, and that was don't go to hell, like not even once. And after I left Islam, I was like, the fuck do I do now? Everything is meaningless. Life has no purpose. I had a full-on existential crisis, but it wasn't for like a day or a few weeks. It was a whole year. I was praying to nothing. Like I would pray and wait for answers, knowing that there was none coming. I was just so miserable. I would cry myself to sleep. I'm like getting emotional just thinking about it. I would cry myself to sleep. I just felt like my whole life had been a lie, which it was. I was living a lie for my whole life. And, you know, it wasn't the best state of mind. That I would still like have, instead of like, I didn't have the imaginary friends anymore, but I would still argue with myself. I don't know if anyone does that, but I would argue with myself about things that happened and replaying things, and, you know, constantly like arguing with myself about what I used to believe and what I currently believed. And we would just go around like in a horrible, awful cycle about how and it would all come down to the same thing, that life is meaningless and why am I alive? And even though I've never attempted to take my life, I've thought about it before, and I think that that's something that people don't really like to talk about, but it's happened with me. I have thought about it. I was always too scared of what was on the other side though, so I never actually attempted it. I would self-harm. I would like pinch myself, cut myself, punch myself, really hurt myself. I'd pull like the back hairs that are like the hairs at the back of my head, and sometimes it was just to feel something. And a lot of people didn't understand it. A lot of my friends didn't understand it. A lot of my family members would just kind of ignore that it was, as they do with everything in my life. They would kind of just ignore what was happening and just like be patient, pray to Allah. And I kept doing that, knowing that Allah didn't exist. Like he wasn't there. I kept doing it just because they were telling me to do it. And I think after I initially got over my existential crisis, and the way that I did that was that I just threw myself into working. I was unemployed for about a year after I left my dad's house, and throughout that year I would just be volunteering. I'd volunteered at like 5 different charities. I went ham. Like I just wanted to load my CV, because I think some of you know I don't play games. I go hard or I go home. So I was volunteering at like 5 different places. I did all kinds of work, and that kind of kept me off the idea that my entire life was meaningless. But when I didn't have work, those thoughts would just creep back up. So that was me directly after I left Islam. But now, having like come down from all of it, having like accepted that like 20 years of my life was a lie, having accepted that, I think I've more or less gotten over it, and leaving Islam was actually one of the best things I did for my mental health. Just not immediately. I had to go through that short-term rough patch before I got better. And then, you know, these like shocks of depression keep coming back, and I think it's because of deep-seated things that happened in my childhood, which is probably something that I should probably go to like psychotherapy for. I'm just like waiting for the right time and the right place to do that, because it's just a lot to go through that process right now for me. And I know how to deal with like these peaks of depression quite well, so you don't have to worry about me. I'm not in crisis. I'm not, you know, attempting to take my own life. It's just when I don't have things to do, like when I don't have work like I do right now, it's really difficult for me to just be like, oh yeah, I'm okay with doing nothing. I can do nothing for like 4 days, and then it's like, okay, I gotta do something. I gotta fill my day with something. Otherwise, those old thoughts are gonna come back. Like, what is the meaning? What is your purpose? Like, yeah, your purpose, you've decided, is to be happy, but are you happy? Like, all those creeping questions come along. And for those of you who are sitting back and like having a little, you know, smug little grin to yourselves thinking, oh, if you still had God, you wouldn't feel that way. Trust me, serving a petty God like Allah is not going to solve my problems. Like, I was miserable doing that. I just didn't know, because I'd never been happy before. And I've felt what happiness feels like, and it honestly like scares me sometimes that I'm happy. And do you know how fucked that is? That religion did that to me. Like, I'd never been happy in my life, and once I found happiness, I realized how fucking miserable I was, like, throughout the rest of my life. So for those of you who are sitting back with that smug grin, you guys can fuck off. Maybe unsubscribe, leave my channel. That would be good. I don't need you guys to tell me that, you know, if I accept Allah or Jesus or, you know, Krishna, whichever one, that I would be at more peace. Maybe I would, but it wouldn't be an honest peace, and it wouldn't be a peace that I was happy with, and I wouldn't be happy because I'd be lying to myself. So with that out of the way, what was the next step? So after volunteering for a year, and, you know, the whole pressure of these questions was getting to me, I went to a counseling session. It didn't really work out because I wasn't ready to unleash all my truth on one person. You know, I wasn't ready to divulge everything, so I would like cover up things that, you know, my family did, or cover up how I felt, and it didn't really work. So I stopped that, and, you know, I'd made a solid few friends, so I would like spill my grievances to them. Alicia is one of them. She's a lovely human being who is currently suffering because New Zealand did not win against England today, and she supports New Zealand cricket. I don't know anything about cricket, so I mean, leave some positive vibes in the comments for her, please, because she's really suffering. But yeah, I used to confide in her. I made a couple of online friends, and I used to confide with them. But I didn't really find anyone that I could specifically relate to. Like, I hadn't found the ex-Muslim community, and honestly, I didn't know if I was ready to be part of that community. Because, yeah, I had left Islam, but was I ready to be part of the community that talks about Islam concurrently, like endlessly. And I wasn't ready to be involved in any of it. And as it was, I was exposed to, you know, people praying, telling me to wear the hijab, all that stuff, when I really didn't want to, because I didn't believe in any of it anymore. So I wasn't ready to do that, and I would just confide in my friends. And at the time, I was also in a long distance relationship, which will be a whole other video because on why long distance relationships are a terrible idea, or a good idea. I don't know. But I was in that relationship, and we kind of trauma bonded, because he was a despicable alcoholic who would cry on the phone to me every single night, and I would listen to him crying and then also cry about all my problems, and he would forget them all in the morning. So that helped me. I'm not saying that it would be helpful to you, but it definitely helped me. A couple of months down the line, I went to another counseling session. I didn't like the counselor very much, so I stopped seeing her. And I needed counseling for quite a few things. I needed to rectify my mental health in quite a few things. First of all, my mother passing away. Second of all, me being responsible of like 5 kids, 3 or 4 of whom were under 10 years old. I needed counseling on the fact that my father had so brazenly abused me for years. I needed counseling on so many different things. So I wasn't comfortable with the counselor. And the reason I wasn't comfortable was because she was a Muslim, and I felt like I couldn't fully express myself the way I wanted to. Like, I couldn't blaspheme in front of her if I wanted to, even though I'm 100% sure now that she wouldn't have minded, because she was a professional, and it was not her fault at all. I was not at the level of comfort to fully spill how I felt at the time. So I think a month or so down from that, I went back to my GP, and I was kind of like, I need to see a psychiatrist. And I didn't know any of the technical terms, and he was like, you're not that bad. You don't need to see a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist is for someone who can't function in society. You're okay. And I was like, thanks. And at that time, I used to wear my hijab as well. And he was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to prescribe you some medication, and you can take it out whenever you want. If you don't want to take them, don't take them. But I think they'll be good for you. And he prescribed citalopram. I was terrified of them. And then he also sent me to CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. I'll go into that in a little bit. And he also said, whenever you're feeling down, and I was wearing my hijab, so he assumed I was a Muslim. And he was like, just read some Quranic verses, get some peace of mind. And I think someone actually asked, like, do you think religion can help with mental health? And I think, yeah, if you've convinced yourself that that is the right way to go, then I'm sure it does help with your mental health. But if you're unsure and uncertain, and it's as damaging mentally as it was for me, where I was just constantly feeling guilty about everything, I don't think it's good for you. That's my answer to that. But he said that, so he prescribed me, the science of medication and CBT, and also like the religion stuff. So I went to CBT, and it was actually really, really helpful. I really liked my therapist. I really felt like he understood and got to know me. I guess that's what a therapist is meant to do. And CBT is basically exercises to help you deal with things that trigger your depression or your anxiety. And he said I have something called anxiety depression, so whenever I'm anxious about something, which is why when I'm doing nothing I get anxious, it's when I'm anxious I slowly go into a depression. So if I'm not doing anything, that will make me anxious, and then that will lead into me having a depressive episode. And he taught me a lot of ways to deal with it. And he said, throw yourself into your hobbies, write about why you're depressed, like write a little diary. And I still do those things, and I'm really appreciative of those things. I do think I need to go back to dig out all the childhood stuff that I have going on. I don't think I'm ready for that just yet, but I think I do at some point need to do that. But yeah, I found that CBT was the most helpful. As a little disclaimer, everything I do is not going to be suited to you, so please do, take that with a grain of caution. I wouldn't advise everything I do for you and your situation. It very much depends on you. Your body is different, your mind is different to mine. So don't just run to your GP or your local doctor and just be like, I want CBT. Why? Because Faye told me that I need to get CBT. It might not work for you, but it worked very, very well for me. And I also took those antidepressants after like a fuck ton of research and, people telling me that they took the same antidepressant. And, minimal side effects. It gave me some crazy fucking dreams, but it did lift my mood a little bit. And I weaned myself off within about 6 months. I was on them for a total of 6 months. And I weaned myself off in the last month because I wasn't having like a massive dosage. But some people might react to it worse than others. Citalopram is generally one of the low risk antidepressants because it doesn't have a ton of side effects as compared to the others. But yeah, it worked for me. The the antidepressants in conjunction with the CBT really helped me come into my own and, you know, just relax and chill out a little bit. Like, I mean, I still carry my world in my backpack, but he got me to like leave things that I didn't need at home, like my umbrella, or, you know, the books that I brought along that I never read, you know, just like these. It was just an anxiety backpack. It was my life in a backpack, and a lot of it just did not need to be there. It was just a burden, and he got me to stop doing that. He got me to stop worrying about, you know, being an hour early to everything, because it's unnecessary and just inconvenient for some people and inconvenient to me. And he also made me feel like a lot of the things that had happened to me weren't my fault, because I saw a lot of the things that happened to me as my fault. So, you know, if you haven't tried CBT, I would say go for it. Obviously, it depends on a lot of things. It depends on the therapist. It depends on, I'm sure, hundreds of things. But I enjoyed it, so I would recommend it. Try it. It can't hurt. It's not invasive. The therapist can't really prescribe you anything. It just give it a go. I also went to a sleep workshop to help me sleep less because I would have a really weird schedule for sleep. And it was not helpful to my mental health, so I went to that workshop. A lot of people there were like, you sleep too much and I sleep less. Can we just like trade, or like you can give me some of your... It's a really fun workshop if you get down to it. They also have eating disorder workshops and stuff like that. But, you know, inquire, find out. They're all really helpful, you know. Now, how am I doing now? I'm sure I have not given you a picturesque idea of mental health. Like, I'm definitely not fully mentally healthy, but I don't think anyone is. And I'm certainly doing like thousands of times better than I was when I was like 14. I'm doing definitely doing thousands of times better than when I was like 18, 19, when I was trapped in my dad's house after my mother passed away. So I'm doing significantly better. And yeah, I still have depressive spells. Sometimes it's brought on by my period, and other times I'm just anxious, and that sort of brings on an episode, but I can normally feel it coming, and I know how to prepare myself. I, you know, have the tools to deal with it. I draw. I've been drawing a ton recently. I draw, I cook, I, you know, sit outside, I just walk around. I just want to pet some animals. Yesterday I pet 5 dogs, which was amazing. Today I went to a pet shop. I didn't really pet anything, but I mean, I saw some animals, and that just helps because it makes me feel good. It puts a smile on my face. And sometimes, you know, I just want to cry, and that's okay. In my opinion, crying is equal to laughing. One is just tabooed, you know, like you're not meant to be crying on public transport or in the middle of a supermarket. But I do. If I need to cry, I just cry, because you need to do it. And if you're not going to do it somewhere, you know, that's healthy for you to do it, then, you know, you're just going to push all those feelings down, and it's going to be the worst idea for you. So yeah, if I can recommend anything to you as someone who is not a professional, I'm not going to recommend medicine. I'm not going to recommend you go to your doctor and demand therapy, but I am going to say that if you need to fucking cry, just fucking cry. Nobody, especially in London, nobody gives a fuck if you cry on public transport. Just do it, get it out of your system. If you're wearing makeup, that might fuck up your makeup, but like, it's worth it because you get those feelings out. And I'm not saying like in hysterics, like if it just needs to come out, even just a little bit, just do it, because you'll feel so much better after you're done. I always have. Like, for example, like the first few years after I left my dad's house, the reality of my mother's death had finally struck me. And I actually didn't visit her grave until I think it was last year. So it took me a while to process things. And, you know, anytime my bus that I was sitting on would pass like a church or a graveyard, I would just be streaming. And I wouldn't be like bawling my eyes. I wouldn't be like filled with sadness. It was just, you know, something that I needed to do that I didn't do for years because it hadn't struck me. My system was so overloaded with responsibility that I couldn't grieve the death of my mother. So anytime I passed by a church or a graveyard or something like that, I'd just be like streaming tears, and it just made me feel better about it. It was actually the CBT that made me feel good about it. And he was like, you can do one of two things. You can either like set aside a time in the day where you just feel sad and cry, or you can just cry whenever you want, because who gives a fuck? He didn't say who gives a fuck. He's a professional. But I'm saying, who gives a fuck? You're crying. People cry. Get over it, you know? Now, the second part of this video was just going to be your comments and questions, so I'm going to do that now. And I'm sorry if I've been rambling too much. My mind is kind of fuzzy right now, and I just, you know, I wanted to give something to the crowd, and not rant about something, because that's the last thing I did on camera. So the first comment / question is from Zara K, and she insisted that I put this in the video. It's, why are you avoiding me? Zara, I'm not avoiding you. Every time that I can go and see you, I do, because it's always a good time. It's always a good time to see Zara K. Because even though, and this is her words, these are not my words, even though she comes across as cold and shrewd, she's like one of the warmest people. Like, she will give you the world if you just like become her friend. And I promise you, I'm not trying to con you, I'm not trying to give you hacks on how to become Zara's friend. I'm just saying she's one of the warmest people alive, and why would I be avoiding you? I'm not avoiding you. I just haven't been feeling myself. Since Pride, I've just been like partied out. I don't want to go out and drink. I don't want to go out around and be around people. I just want to kind of chill out, pet some animals, and, you know, watch some Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, because that's what I've been watching recently, if you couldn't tell with my content recently. But that's what I've been doing. The next question is from Wajah Hassan. Oh, sorry, it's not a question, it's a comment, and it was actually really sweet. He said that you were brave and fantastic, no question, just a comment. Thank you. That's actually really helpful, because recently I just been feeling like shit constantly. Just look in the mirror and saying, what a piece of shit. That has been me. That has been my brain. Oh, something I didn't bring up is my body dysmorphia, and how I just feel like I look like a blob sometimes. Like, I don't recognize that I'm a pretty human being. Like, I can't even say it. Like, my body dysmorphia has been so out of bounds. It's summer, so, you know, I'm not going to wear a jumper in the summer like I used to. And I just feel ugly sometimes, you know? And that's crazy, but I do. Anyways, moving on before I, you know, actually start crying. From @US of Ahmedica. For some people, it's not easy to treat. So this is a comment. It's not easy to treat in terms of depression. Getting the right kind of help is important. There is no one-size-fits-all solution, which I completely agree with. I've been struggling with anxiety depression since high school. It's a complicated topic, but CBT and exercise and mindfulness have really helped me, and talk therapy hasn't. I found the same. Counseling didn't really help me, but CBT, exercise, and not really mindfulness, but CBT and exercise really did help me. I used to go to a lot of dance classes. I currently, up until recently, before I got these in my face, I used to go swimming all the time. And once these heal up a little bit more, I'll go back to swimming, because I really, really enjoy that. But yeah, exercise, being outdoors, and if meditation works for you, it doesn't for me, because I fidget a lot. If that helps you, do it. Do whatever you have to do to be healthy. One sec. The next comment is from Chromasaur13, or Failure Moon. I'll tag everyone when I post the tweet for this. I suffer from PTSD. Some events or stress can trigger my anxiety and depression from time to time. I have the same. Like, if I'm like really claustrophobic, I feel like I can't breathe. If I work with kids who are between like 4 or maybe 5 and 14, I can't really do that, because it just brings on my PTSD from the time where I just had to mother people. Mother my siblings, and that is really, it becomes very, very stressful for me. It doesn't really happen anymore, but anytime someone would shout at me, like really have a go at me, I would get really bad PTSD. Hi Ed, stop spying on me. Go away. I love you too. Bye. Sorry, he always disturbs me. He's a bad. But yeah, anytime anyone would have a real go at me, I would have like very serious PTSD, where I'd just like start crying and having flashbacks, and it would be really, really bad. For that, I would definitely recommend that you go and see someone, because it used to trigger me a lot when things from my past used to creep up. Whenever I saw my dad, just immediate PTSD, like I could not function. And my family were very insistent that I go and make up, like get him to forgive me. So that was really fucked up and annoying, because he was the one who was in the wrong without a shadow of a doubt. But yeah, that would trigger me. But yeah, you definitely should see someone about that. It's not fun. Next comment from Fitzpuddle is, my own experience is that the side effects of commonly prescribed medications for depression and anxiety are worse than the condition itself. I found the opposite. I definitely found the opposite, especially after like the first 6 weeks or so. It really helps me just perk up and be normal. The only weird side effect that I had from them was the weird dreams. That was the only thing. It was like end of world shit that I like like the world was being swallowed by the oceans kind of shit that I would dream about, and that was terrifying. But other than that, it really did perk me up from day to day, like dealing with people, because I could recognize that a dream is a dream. But yeah, I mean, that was my experience, and some people might have others. Many like antidepressants and anxiety medication have a lot of side effects. Even citalopram had a very substantial list of side effects. But you know, it's not always the same with how people react to it. So check that out before you consider medication. So from @Faye_the Somali, I found it difficult as a woman of color to actually accept the fact that therapy is healing. Talking to a complete stranger about deep shit is looked down upon in my culture. And TM, the word nerd, said similar. He said that the same is with Mexicans. Going to therapy is viewed as something white people do. And that sentiment is exactly what my family would say, that it's not, Muslims wouldn't do that, non-Muslims do that, because they don't have the peace of, you know, Allah flowing through them. And it was difficult for me to step up to the plate and be like, I'm fucked up. But by the end of it, where I had gone to my GP and was basically begging him to send me to an institution, just be completely institutionalized, the first thing that I said to my therapist who did the CBT with me was, I am not right. I am fucked up. I need you to help me. And I think when you get to that point is where you're the most ready and most susceptible to healing. And, you know, my family members would really scare me. They were like, oh, if you tell people that you're depressed, nobody's ever going to take you seriously anymore. Everybody's going to think that you're crazy. Whenever you actually have something wrong with you, they'll just put it down to your depression. Or they would say things like, oh, if you tell them that you're depressed, they're just going to institutionalize. They're just going to lock you up forever. And it was just really, really unhealthy. Something my dad used to say is that all therapists are gay. And if they can't even help themselves, then how can they help you? Which is the dumbest thing ever. And it was one of the reasons that he never got help properly. He did go to therapy at some point, and I think his therapist specifically was gay, and he was on like antipsychotics because he needed to be, because he's a psychopath. But yeah, he denounced all of them as gay and misguided, so how could they possibly help you? And I definitely think that in a lot of cultures and in a lot of backgrounds, it's still very, very, unfortunately, very looked down upon or frowned upon to, you know, go out and seek help for your mental health. Sorry, I think I just said that really weird. Apologies. But yeah, I think it's still very, very frowned upon to do that, and it's a shame, because if you were bleeding, just like half your body was just falling apart, you'd immediately be rushed to the hospital. But if you're having a mental breakdown, having like a full-on Britney Spears moment, for example, you just shave your head and you're just running around, people just sort of stand around and laugh at you, when it's not really that funny when you're having a mental breakdown. And I've had a few of those. For example, I and my ex, the one that I had a long distance relationship with, and it was a very serious relationship, we almost got married, and it wasn't a Muslim guy, he was, you know, a white guy in America. When we were having arguments and it was a breakdown of our relationship, and he had called me and was yelling at me, calling me a bitch, calling me a cunt, calling me distrustful, all kinds of stuff, disloyal, I would have full-on like panic attacks. I would have full-on breakdowns in the middle of work, because he would text me those things in my break, and then I could not function. Like, I would be crying, I'd be like whimpering, I would have full-on breakdowns. I could not function. I could not hold it in until later. And it's not funny. You just like, I got to a point where someone had to take me out of the building completely, and I was like wiping my face with bits of paper, not even tissue. Like, I did not give a fuck. I think I had like 2 paper cuts here. It was ridiculous. But that's how you get sometimes. That's where your brain is. It just does not give a shit. Like, it would not care if you were in the middle of a jungle trying to be attacked. If you are triggered, you're triggered. You can't function. You can't protect yourself. You can't do anything. And it's that serious. Like, we live in a time where, you know, we don't need to do that. We don't need to like survive anymore. Like, go out and forage things. So we have a ton more things to think about. And sometimes our mental capability is more important than our physical capability of doing things. There aren't like a ton of physical jobs anymore. There's so many jobs where you just have to like stare at a screen and just, you know, do a robot's job, essentially, like enter data or write something out, or, you know, write reports. And you know what I'm saying? Like, it's very technical, very mentally focused work, and you know, your capability of doing that is so important for you to take care of. Now, that's why holidays are important. That's why breaks are important. And it's just not taken seriously by some communities. Like my community, I can 100% say they don't give a fuck about that. If you're a crying mess, they'll just say, oh, she's possessed, or, oh, you know, someone needs to come over and get the jinn out of her, or, oh, you know, she's just, you know, the shaitan is whispering to her, or, you know, the devil's in her ear. And it's really dumb and really stupid, because people are suffering under that. And like, I don't know how to help except tell people that they're stupid. Like, why would you minimalize, first of all, something like that, and then put it down to something that, like, it's stupid? And that's the danger of religion also. It's like, if you get too far into it, where you start exploring that whole jinn thing, like, it takes over your fucking life. You have to say a dua for everything. You have to say a dua when you come in the house, when you eat, before you go to sleep. You know, read Ayatul Kursi like 500 fucking million times so that the jinns don't touch you. And then sometimes they might just touch you anyway. You pour boiling water, oh, you hurt one of their friends. Their friend is gonna come and fuck you up now. Like, oh, okay, I'm like going off topic, but that's my point. Right? Like, these communities are so bent on making excuses for mental health problems that they just don't deal with it. And it's super, super unhealthy and super, super, you know, unfair to people who are going through that, to people with schizophrenia and something, you know, things that are worse. I don't really, I'm not here to, you know, teach you on mental health issues, but, like, you know what I'm saying, like a personality disorder, bipolar depression, all that kind of stuff. Like, instead of just going to a doctor to see what they have to say, they'll just go, oh, you know, jinn, you take her to the masjid, get that jinn out of her, beat the crap out of that lady and get it out, you know. And most of the time it is girls that they're doing that too. It's not men, because men can't, most of the time you can't fault them in those communities where, you know, it's basically patriarchal. But I'm rambling now. I'm going to sign off because I feel tired from doing that. I hope that this video was insightful, if not, you know, informative. And if it wasn't either of those, I just hope that you enjoyed something about it to make it worth your... I'm sorry. Like, I'm pretty sure by tomorrow I'll be 100% fine. But today it's just like, I'm like 75% here, and then the rest of me is just, it's just not here. I need to wait for it to come tomorrow. But, you know, I'll be fine, and thank you for all your well wishes. Thank you for not forgetting me while I disappear from Twitter, mostly. And I hope that, you know, you guys have had a good day, good evening, good whatever, good Sunday, good cricket match, you know, whoever you were supporting. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. I know this was a bit of a mess, but what else were you expecting? It's me. So yeah, I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.